You think old city fountains were just pretty water for tourists? But what if how Tartaria's fountains were actually pumping stations for the city's power system isn't a theory, but a clue someone forgot to erase? Look closer at the base of a decorative fountain. There's a heavy service hatch, bolts, metal seams, and a valve wheel that looks like it belongs in a factory, not a park. Now the weird part, under some of these fountains, the pipes are huge, wide enough to make you ask one simple question. What needed that much pressure? And the records, they describe the statues in perfect detail, but go strangely quiet about what sits underneath. Then you find another fountain, another city. Same vents, same grates, same locked doors nearby, same maintenance access that no tour guide ever mentions. And right when it starts to line up, the paperwork breaks, attachments missing, pages torn out, dates that don't match. So, tell me this, if these fountains were only built for beauty, why do they look like the hidden control points of a citywide system? You've probably walked past one. Maybe you snapped a photo. Maybe you tossed a coin in and kept moving. A fountain in a city square. Grand, old, beautiful. But here's the part nobody tells you. Look down. Not at the water, at the base. There's a hatch. Heavy, industrial. The kind with bolt heads the size of your fist. A valve wheel sits beside it. Thick spokes radiating out, like something built to be turned with real force. The metal is worn smooth in a few spots where hands gripped it, again and again, year after year. This isn't ornamental hardware. This is the kind of equipment you'd expect in a pump house, a factory, a machine room. And yet the guidebook in your hand calls it decorative. The photograph is from 1904, a grand fountain in a European plaza. The image quality is sharp enough to see details, sharp enough to see the problem. Because right there, in the lower right corner, you can make out the service access, the grate work, the way the stone curb sits just slightly higher than it should, as if it's covering something underneath. Then a second photograph appears. Same fountain, different angle. This time it's under construction. Workers stand beside pipe sections lying in the excavation pit. The pipes are wider than a man's torso. One worker has his arm extended, palm flat against the metal, as if measuring it. His hand doesn't even reach halfway across. The caption reads, "Installation of ornamental water supply." But ornamental fountains don't need pipes that big, so you start looking for paperwork. City records, old engineering maps, the kind stored in municipal archives, yellowed, brittle, filed under Public Works. The plaza map shows the fountain as a simple circle, elegant, centered, harmless. Then you find the overlay, the infrastructure map, water lines, pressure lines, service tunnels, and suddenly the fountain isn't just sitting on the plaza, it's sitting above a junction. Thick lines converge beneath it, then branch out. The fountain isn't just in the middle, it's a node in a network spreading under the streets in radial patterns, reaching buildings 3 blocks away in every direction. The Modern City website describes it as a beloved landmark featuring classical statuary and year-round water display. The engineering log from the 1890s describes it as Hydraulic Station 7, Northwest Sector, Station. Not fountain, station. There's a maintenance report from 1912, handwritten. Most of it is normal, stone repair, basin resealing, statue cleaning. But at the bottom, in smaller script, one line changes everything. Pressure valve servicing delayed pending district approval. Why would a decorative fountain need district approval to service a pressure valve? So, you check other fountains, different cities, different countries, and the details keep rhyming. Vienna. A fountain in a public garden. Tourist photos show the sculptures and the water. But zoom in on the background. There's a small building nearby, styled like a classical pavilion. Columns, pediment, the whole pretty disguise. Except the door is solid steel. The windows are too high and too small for anyone to see through. And there's a vent, not decorative scroll work. A real ventilation shaft, tucked behind carved stone, nearly invisible unless you're specifically looking for it. Paris. A fountain near a major boulevard. The plaza around it was renovated in the 1960s. The fountain stayed, of course. Historic preservation. But in the renovation photos, before the new pavement went down, you can see what they uncovered. A basement, deep, brick-lined. Workers stand at the edge, looking down like they're staring into a well. Behind them, someone has stacked sections of old pipe, corroded, but intact. Some pieces still have manufacturer stamps. Manchester Ironworks, 1883. The caption says, "Foundation stabilization work." It doesn't explain why a fountain needs a basement that deep. It doesn't explain why those pipes are down there at all. And it definitely doesn't explain the metal door they found underground, sealed from the inside, with a lock mechanism that required 3 separate keys. The official records are meticulous about the art. Sculptor's name, marble sourcing, statue dimensions, bronze composition. But when it comes to what sits below, service infrastructure as per city engineering standards. No details, no diagrams, no equipment lists. Just that same vague line, repeating across different cities, different decades, different fountains. By the time you're looking at the 5th example, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. These fountains weren't just decoration that happened to have plumbing. They were built like infrastructure that happened to look beautiful. Heavy bases, thick pipes, access points, pressure systems, junction nodes, all of it hidden in plain sight, dressed in marble and bronze, placed in the center of public squares where thousands of people pass by every day. Never looking down, never asking why a fountain needs a basement, or what all that pressure was really for. The fountain in Prague's Old Town has stood there for more than a century. Every guidebook mentions it, every tour stops there, but nobody mentions the workers. A photograph surfaced in a municipal archive in 2018. It's dated 1891. A construction crew stands beside the site during installation. 14 men, shovels, wheelbarrows, the usual tools, and pipe sections stacked behind them like fallen trees. One man stands with his boot propped on a pipe. His posture is casual, proud even. The kind of stance that says, "Look at what we're building." The pipe beside his boot is taller than he is. The diameter is roughly 1 meter across. You can estimate it from the photograph using the man's height as a reference. It's a simple scaling method. The numbers line up. 1 meter. For context, modern city water mains, the kind that feed whole neighborhoods, rarely exceed half that size. So, what was this for? The official documentation describes the project as installation of ornamental fountain with bronze sculpture grouping and decorative basin. There's a materials list: marble tonnage, bronze composition, sandstone blocks. But the pipe specifications, missing, not redacted, not stamped, restricted, just absent. As if someone cataloged every visible element and skipped the part that went underground. A second photograph from the same archive shows the excavation pit. It's taken from above, looking down. The pit extends at least 4 meters deep, maybe deeper. The bottom disappears into shadow. Wooden support beams brace the walls. Standard practice for deep digging. But here's what doesn't fit. The fountain basin in the final design sits only half a meter deep. You can see it in modern photos. In summer, children wade in it. It's shallow, decorative. So why dig 4 meters down? The city engineering map from 1892 offers one answer. Actually, it offers several answers, and they don't sit neatly together. The map shows a network of lines beneath the plaza, color-coded, blue for water supply, red for drainage, black for hydraulic pressure distribution. Hydraulic pressure distribution, that's the term they used. Not water lines, not sewage. Pressure distribution. The black lines form a web. They radiate from the fountain location to buildings around the square. Government offices, a bank, the old telegraph exchange, a courthouse. Each building has a small notation. HP connection point. HP hydraulic power. By 1892, some European cities were already experimenting with hydraulic systems. London had them. Manchester, Geneva. The technology existed. Water under pressure could run lifts, open vault doors, power printing presses, drive industrial machinery. But those were usually specialized networks, built for a defined purpose, tracked carefully, documented in detail. This map shows something else. This looks like integration. A fountain that doubles as a distribution hub. Beauty and utility merged so completely that most people only ever notice one half. Then a third piece surfaces. A clerk's ledger from 1894, monthly operating expenses for Plaza Fountain Station. Not plaza fountain. Fountain station. The entries are routine. Labor costs, coal for heating, lubricants, valve replacements. Then, halfway through the year, the entries stop. Not slowly, not with a note about decommissioning, not even a scribble that says move to another office. They just end mid-page. The rest of the ledger stays blank, but the fountain itself, still standing, still flowing, still marked on tourist maps as a landmark worth visiting. So, you start checking other fountains. Berlin, a fountain near Alexanderplatz. Construction photos from 1889 show the same oversized pipes, the same deep excavation, the same nearby pavilion with ventilation shafts. The city records describe it as a public water feature with artistic elements. But a newspaper clipping from 1891 mentions in passing that the new fountain provides hydraulic service to adjacent municipal facilities. Hydraulic service. There it is again. London, Trafalgar Square. Everyone knows the fountains, iconic, photographed millions of times. An engineering survey from 1883 notes pressure reservoir chambers beneath Northern Fountain, providing power distribution to Whitehall Complex. That survey sits in public works infrastructure. Meanwhile, the fountain itself is celebrated as public art. 2 different documents, 2 different purposes. Same location, Vienna, Munich, Lyon, Brussels. The pattern repeats. Beautiful fountains, heavy pipes, deep basements, pressure systems, and these strange little references, service, distribution, hydraulic power, that appear once, then vanish from the official story. And almost always, the paperwork is split. Art records in one archive, engineering records in another, as if someone decided these 2 halves should never be seen side by side. By the 5th city, you stop calling it coincidence. This isn't one peculiar fountain with odd construction details. This is a system. Coordinated, repeated, hidden in plain sight across multiple countries. And the strangest part? Nobody seems to notice that it all runs beneath our feet. Cities are built in layers. Most people only see the surface, streets, buildings, parks, the parts designed to be visible. But beneath that, always runs the machinery, sewers, gas lines, water mains, electrical conduits, the hidden infrastructure that makes urban life possible. We accept this now. It feels normal, expected. But in the 1880s, this was still being figured out. And one solution, quiet, elegant, and nearly forgotten, was hydraulic power. The principle is simple. Water under pressure can do work. Push a piston, turn a wheel, lift a load, open a door. London understood this early. By 1883, the London Hydraulic Power Company operated more than 180 miles of underground mains. High-pressure water flowed through pipes beneath the streets, delivering power to buildings across the city. No coal needed at the point of use, no steam engine in every basement, no smoke. Just clean, reliable pressure. Turn a valve, and the system responds. Lifts rose in hotels, printing presses ran in newspaper offices, theater stages rotated, warehouse cranes lifted cargo, and bank vault doors, massive steel constructions weighing several tons, could be moved with the twist of a wheel, all powered by water. Manchester built a similar system. So did Geneva, Melbourne, Buenos Aires. These weren't stunts or lab trials. They were municipal systems that worked, day after day for decades. But here's what makes them different from what came after. Hydraulic systems required pressure, not occasional pressure, constant pressure, regulated, steady, predictable. That meant reservoirs, pumping stations, accumulator towers, and distribution nodes, places where pressure could be maintained, controlled, divided, and sent out to different parts of the network. In London, they built obvious pump houses, utilitarian brick buildings, clearly industrial. Nobody confused them for art. But in other cities, the nodes were hidden. A fountain becomes perfect for this. It's already a water feature, already tied into underground piping, already accepted as part of the city's public face, so you build it larger, you dig deeper, you add pressure chambers beneath the decorative basin, you route distribution lines out from the foundation, and on the surface, you place art, statues, carved stone, bronze figures that glitter in the sun. Nobody questions a fountain. Nobody studies the maintenance hatches too closely, or asks why the curb sits higher than it needs to. The beauty becomes the disguise. A city engineer's report from Geneva, dated 1887, puts it plainly. Integration of hydraulic distribution points within existing ornamental features allows for operational discretion while maintaining aesthetic civic standards. Operational discretion. That's the phrase they used. Not secrecy, not concealment, discretion. Because the system works best when people don't think about it, when the machinery fades into the background of daily life. And once you accept that, the next step feels colder. If you control the pressure, you control what opens and what stays closed, what moves and what remains still. Vault doors, lift cages, loading. Gates, archive rooms, even secure corridors where access matters. Access itself becomes manageable. Through a distributed system most citizens never see. And the fountain in the plaza? Beautiful, historic. A place where children play and tourists take photographs. While beneath it, pressure flows through pipes as wide as a man's torso, branching out in directions the guidebooks never mention. The surface shows art, the depth shows control, and the two were never meant to be seen at the same time. But once you notice the split, once you see how often beauty sits directly above utility, you start asking yourself a dangerous question. What else is hiding under the monuments we stopped questioning? The records should be straightforward. When a city builds a fountain, there's documentation. Contracts, blueprints, budget reports, equipment manifests. And the visible parts are almost always documented beautifully. Stone sourced from Carrara, bronze cast by renowned sculptors, marble pedestals carved by master craftsmen. Every artistic detail recorded, cataloged, preserved. But ask what went underneath, and the language changes. It turns vague, generic, strangely imprecise for engineering paperwork. A Vienna municipal record from 1888 describes fountain construction this way. Foundation work completed as per standard hydraulic specifications. Standard specifications. No details, no measurements, no equipment list. In the same report, they spend 3 full paragraphs on the choice of marble for the basin rim. A Berlin file from 1891 reads, "Underground infrastructure installed according to city engineering protocols." Which protocols? What infrastructure? Not specified. These are government documents. Bureaucracies love detail. They measure everything. They file everything. Except this. And there's a pattern in how things are named, or rather, how they are not named. Buildings near fountains sometimes appear with odd designations. Service pavilion, maintenance structure, hydraulic annex, never pump house, never pressure station. Those terms existed. They were used in London, in Manchester. Clear functional labels that told you exactly what a building did. But in cities where the fountains looked like art, the words soften. They become polite, almost decorative themselves. A Munich archive holds a handwritten ledger from 1893, listing monthly expenses for municipal facilities. One line reads, "Plaza Ornamental Station, operating costs, ornamental station." That phrase appears in 3 other cities, always attached to fountains, always shortened after the first mention, as if the clerk didn't want to keep writing it out. But what makes a station ornamental, and what makes an ornament a station? The words clash unless you read them as a deliberate merger. A station that must appear ornamental, or an ornament that secretly functions as a station. Then there's the photograph from 1895. A worker stands beside a fountain in Lyon. He's holding a wrench, large, heavy, the kind used for serious mechanical work. The caption says, "Maintenance of decorative water features." But look at his uniform. It's not a gardener's outfit, not a stoneworker's apron. It's the same uniform worn by municipal engineers, the same insignia, the same heavy boots. He isn't there to polish statues. And then come the torn pages. A Brussels archive has a folder marked Fountain Construction 1889 to 1891. 37 pages, detailed records. Except pages 12 through 16 are missing, not misplaced, torn out. You can see the remnants still bound into the spine. The page before the gap discusses sculpture installation. The page after discusses inauguration ceremonies. Whatever was on those missing pages covered the stretch between finishing the artistic elements and opening to the public. The gap sits exactly where technical implementation would normally live. There's a clerk's note in a Munich file dated 1897, tucked into the margin. Valve chamber access. Refer to sealed engineering documents, city vault. Sealed documents. Why seal maintenance records for a fountain? Another note, this time from Prague, 1892, says, pressure specifications withheld per municipal directive. Withheld, not lost, not misfiled, deliberately withheld. The artistic records are exhaustive, open, celebrated. The mechanical records are fragmented, vague, sometimes missing altogether, and occasionally, just occasionally, marked with phrases like restricted access or departmental use only. It's as if two archives exist in parallel. One tells you about beauty, sculpture, civic pride, public art. The other whispers about pressure, distribution, regulation, control, and someone, at some point, decided these two stories shouldn't be easy to connect. Not through destruction, that would be obvious, through separation, through vague phrasing, through careful filing that forces you to visit multiple archives, read multiple documents, and notice what isn't there before the pattern snaps into focus. The labels are missing because someone chose not to write them clearly. The question is why. One fountain with odd features is a curiosity. Two might still look like coincidence, but five becomes something else entirely. So, let's line them up. Vienna, 1888. A fountain in the Stadtpark, grand, neo-Baroque, photographed constantly by tourists. Look closer at the base. Ventilation grates. 4 of them, placed at the cardinal points around the foundation. Modern fountains don't need ventilation. There's nothing down there that should require air movement. But these grates are original. You can see them in the construction photographs. They were built into the design, not added later. And nearby, about 20 meters away, there's a small stone building, classical columns. It looks like a harmless garden folly. Except the door is solid iron. The windows are narrow slits, positioned about 3 meters up. City records call it a pavilion, but pavilions are meant to welcome people in. This one was built to keep people out. Berlin, 1891. The Alexanderplatz fountain, busy location, thousands passing it daily. The curb around the fountain sits about 15 centimeters higher than the surrounding plaza. Not enough for most people to notice, but enough to matter if you're trying to conceal something underneath. There's a service hatch on the north side, heavy metal, set flush with the stone, and about 40 meters away, tucked behind a tram shelter, another locked structure, ornate, beautiful, almost like it was designed to blend in. No windows at all. Lyon, 1887, Place Bellecour, a fountain locales call the Bronze Beauty. The construction records show the excavation went 6 meters deep, but the basin itself is only about 60 centimeters deep. The math doesn't work unless something else fills that space. Then you notice the paving, a circular stone pattern about 3 meters in diameter, centered exactly on the fountain. It looks decorative, yes, but it's also a marker. Underground access points are often signed like this, hidden in plain sight through ornamental geometry. Prague, 1891, Old Town Square fountain, the one with the oversized pipes. During plaza renovations in 2003, workers found a sealed chamber beneath it, brick-lined, dry, empty, but the walls showed mounting points, brackets, anchor bolts. Something heavy had been installed there and later removed. The renovation report mentions it in one line: historical foundation void, no structural concern. Then it moves on. Brussels, 1889, Mont des Arts fountain. It was rebuilt after war damage, but the foundation remained original. There's a metal door in the retaining wall, about 15 meters from the fountain, painted to match the stone, locked. A municipal worker interviewed in 2011 said it hadn't been opened in his 30-year career. When asked what was behind it, he shrugged. Old pump equipment, probably. Nothing important now. Nothing important now. 5 cities, 5 fountains. And the same strange features keep returning. Heavy foundations, ventilation where none should be needed, locked buildings nearby, service access that clearly leads somewhere, but is barely documented, records that obsess over the art, yet blur or skip the engineering, curbs that sit just a little too high, excavations that go far too deep, pipes that look built for power, not decoration. You can call one fountain an oddity. You can call two a historical quirk. But when the same design pattern repeats across 5 different countries, built within a 4-year span, and every one of them contains infrastructure elements that don't match the official story, that's not accident, that's coordination. These weren't fountains that happened to have unusual construction. They were nodes in a network, pressure distribution points disguised as public art, operational infrastructure dressed in marble and bronze, and placed in the most visible locations possible. And the most unsettling part? These are just the ones we found. How many others are still standing, still flowing, still hiding their purpose beneath tourist photographs and guidebook descriptions? How many times have you walked past one, taken a picture, tossed a coin in the water? Never. Once looking down at the hatch, the grate, the locked door nearby? This isn't one weird fountain. This is a system, and we're only starting to see its edges. We think of power as electricity. Flip a switch. The lights come on. Plug in a device. It works. Clean, invisible, delivered through wires we barely notice. But electricity didn't fully dominate city life until the early 20th century. In many places it came in waves, block by block, district by district. And some cities lagged well into the 1920s and beyond. Before that, power looked different. It looked like steam, coal smoke rising from factories, and from any building that needed to run serious machines. It looked like horses, thousands of them pulling carriages, hauling goods, providing the literal horsepower that kept a city moving. And in some places, quiet places, forward-thinking places, it looked like water. Hydraulic power systems ran on a simple premise. Pressurized water could do mechanical work. Not water flowing naturally. Water under pressure, stored, regulated, and distributed through underground pipes. A hydraulic lift needed no steam engine inside the building, no coal, no boiler in the basement. Just a connection to a pressure main and a piston system. Turn a valve. Water surges in. The piston rises. The lift descends. Close the valve. The pressure stops. The lift holds. Simple. Reliable. Quiet. London's system, at its peak, powered more than 8,000 machines. Lifts, cranes, printing presses, dock equipment, even theater machinery. And the Tower Bridge. It opens on hydraulic power, those massive bascules, hundreds of tons each, lifted by water pressure. No smoke at the point of use, no clattering engine room in every building, just controlled force, delivered on demand. But hydraulic systems needed infrastructure. You needed pumping stations to create pressure, accumulator towers to store it, distribution mains to carry it across the city. And you needed nodes, places where pressure could be regulated, divided, and sent in different directions. In London, they built obvious pump houses. Nobody had to guess what they were. But what if you wanted the system without the visibility? What if you wanted power distribution that didn't announce itself? A fountain becomes useful. It's already a water feature, already part of the city's landscape, already connected to underground lines. So you build it differently. On top, the basin remains decorative, beautiful, exactly what people expect in a public square. But underneath, you build a pressure chamber, larger than anything needed for display, deeper than a purely decorative fountain would ever require. Down there, you install regulators, valves, distribution manifolds, equipment designed to take high-pressure input and split it into multiple controlled outputs. Then you route pipes outward, underground, following street lines, reaching buildings that need power but can't. Justify running their own steam systems, government offices, banks, communication centers, places where reliability matters more than comfort and more than appearances. Above, the fountain continues to flow, pretty, photogenic. Below, the machinery keeps working, hidden, practical. A photograph from Geneva, dated 1890, shows workers inside what the caption calls a fountain maintenance chamber. But look at what they're standing beside. Not small pumps for circulating display water. Those are modest, compact, almost domestic. This is industrial equipment, pressure vessels, clusters of gauges, valve assemblies with wheels that take real strength to turn. One worker is checking a gauge, another is writing in a logbook. This isn't the feel of simple maintenance. This is operation. The chamber is lit by electric lamps, still unusual for 1890, still expensive, still more common in facilities that mattered. Why light a decorative fountain's basement like a critical workspace? Unless it wasn't just a fountain's basement. Technical manuals from hydraulic power companies describe efficient distribution as radial networks emanating from central nodes. Central nodes, not necessarily pump houses, not necessarily stations. Nodes, a neutral word, a flexible word. A node could be anything. It could be a fountain, a beautiful fountain in a public square where thousands of people pass every day, never suspecting that beneath their feet, pressure moves through pipes, quietly powering systems they'll never see. The machinery runs underground, out of sight, while above, children play in the water, artists sketch the statues, and tour guides talk about classical beauty. Two different purposes, two different stories, same location. And once you understand that power didn't always look like power, that it could be hidden inside beauty, dressed up as decoration. The fountains weren't alone. Near almost every fountain with the unusual construction, there's a building. Small, ornate, beautiful. Too beautiful for what it claims to be. Vienna. The Stadtpark fountain sits in the center of the gardens. About 20 meters to the east, there's a structure locals call the Music Pavilion. Classical columns, marble steps, decorative frieze work, lyres, laurel wreaths, the whole language of concerts and celebration. It looks like it should host string quartets on warm summer evenings, but there's no stage inside, no seating, no acoustic design. The interior is a single room, stone floor, thick walls, and a door that opens to stairs leading down. The city register lists it as garden structure, ornamental, but an 1889 maintenance log refers to it as hydraulic annex, east sector. Two names, two purposes, Berlin. Near the Alexanderplatz fountain, there's a structure that looks like a neoclassical temple, smaller than a chapel, larger than a shed, Doric columns, a pediment with carved reliefs. The whole thing feels like it was lifted from ancient Greece and dropped into a modern plaza. Tourist maps don't mention it. It's just there, part of the scenery. But look closer. The windows are too small and positioned too high to provide natural light. The door is reinforced steel, painted to look like wood. And there are vents, modern vents installed in the 1950s, feeding air to something below. A building that looks 2,000 years old, fitted with 20th century ventilation. Why? Because whatever was down there in 1891 still needed airflow in 1955. Lion. Place Bellecour. The fountain sits in the plaza's northwest corner. About 40 meters away, there's a small rotunda, elegant, domed columns holding up a copper roof aged to pale green. A plaque says it was built in 1887 as a decorative garden feature, but a construction photograph from that same year tells a different story. The rotunda is half built, and you can see inside. No benches, no graceful interior, no ornament meant for visitors. Just a circular wall of brick descending below ground level, and metal brackets mounted at regular intervals, brackets sized for heavy equipment. In the finished structure, all of this disappears. The interior gets plastered, a floor is laid. A few decorative urns are placed on pedestals, as if that's all it ever was, but the basement remains. It's sealed, accessible only through a hatch hidden beneath one of the urns. Prague, Old Town Square, northeast corner. There's a building that guidebooks describe as a Baroque pump house, now closed to the public. At least they call it a pump house. That's honest. But look at the architecture. Carved stone garlands, gilded details, windows with decorative grillwork that belongs on a palace, not a utility building. Why make a pump house look like a jewel box? Unless the beauty was part of the function. Unless making it look like art was how you kept people from asking what it actually did. And across cities, the pattern holds. Whenever there's a fountain with deep foundations and oversized pipes, there's a nearby building that's too refined for its stated purpose. It's called a pavilion, a garden folly, an ornamental structure, but it's built with reinforced doors, ventilation, basement access, and always positioned within a precise distance of the fountain. Not random placement, not just aesthetic balance, operational proximity, close enough to connect underground, far enough apart to seem unrelated on the surface. These buildings are designed to be overlooked. They're pretty, historic, part of the postcard, but they're also access points, entrances to the hidden infrastructure, to the machinery that couldn't fit beneath the fountain alone, equipment rooms, valve chambers, pressure regulation systems. Beauty as camouflage, not accidental beauty, not decoration added later. Intentional beauty, built into the plan from the beginning. Make it look like art, and nobody asks about the steel door. Make it look classical, and nobody questions the basement. Make it look like it belongs on a postcard, and nobody wonders what it's really for. The disguise isn't a cover-up, it's architecture. And it works so well that, a century later, tourists still walk past these buildings every day taking photos, never once asking why a garden shed needs walls thick enough to muffle machine noise. Sometimes the truth isn't hidden inside a single document. Sometimes it's hiding in the gap between documents. 3 maps, same city, same era, different purposes. Start with the easiest one. Map 1, Tourist Guide, Vienna, 1895. Beautiful, hand-colored, made to impress. It shows parks, monuments, and fountains. 6 fountains are marked with decorative symbols. Elegant script labels them by name. Hochstrahlbrunnen, Vermählungsbrunnen, Donau-Nixon-Brunnen, art, culture, things you're supposed to visit. This map shows surface reality, the version of the city everyone is allowed to see. Map 2, Municipal Water Supply, Vienna, 1893. Technical, utilitarian. Blue lines crisscrossing the streets. This shows water mains, reservoir connections, distribution pipes for drinking water, and fire suppression. The fountains appear here too, small circles connected to the system, which makes sense, but the line weights are inconsistent. Some fountain connections are thin blue lines, normal supply pipes. Others are thick, much thicker, the kind of weight engineers use to flag high-capacity mains. Why would a decorative fountain need a high-capacity supply? Map 3. City engineering infrastructure, Vienna, 1894. This one is harder to find. It's not sitting in tourist archives or library collections. It's filed under public, works restricted in a municipal basement. And it shows something the other maps don't, black lines. Tiny script labels, HP, hydraulic power. The lines form a network. They radiate outward from specific points across the city. And those points, they're the fountains. Not all fountains, just the 6. The same 6 that appear on the tourist map. The same 6 with unusually thick connections on the water supply map. Now, overlay all 3. The tourist map tells one story: beauty in public space. The water map tells another: standard municipal supply. The engineering map tells the third: distribution, power branching out from central nodes. 3 different stories, same locations. And once they sit on top of each other, the city starts saying something it never says out loud. Take the Hochstrahlbrunnen in Schwarzenberg Platz, a massive jet fountain, one of Vienna's most famous landmarks. On the tourist map, spectacular water display, illuminated at night. On the water supply map, a major junction point with 4 separate line connections. On the engineering map, node designation HP3 Central with 7 black lines radiating outward to surrounding buildings. Government ministries, the Belvedere complex, the Arsenal, the Südbahnhof railway station, all connected, all within about 800 meters. Then the Vermählungsbrunnen near Hoher Markt. Tourist map, historic fountain commemorating royal marriage. Engineering map, HP7 North. Distribution lines running toward Old Town municipal buildings, City Hall, and the Central Post Office. Pattern after pattern. And Vienna isn't unique. In Berlin, the same overlay tells the same story. In Lyon, the same structure appears again. In Prague, the network becomes visible only when you stack the maps and stop treating them as separate worlds. This isn't speculation, it's geometry. The fountains aren't placed randomly just because they look good in a square. They're positioned for coverage. Each one sits at an optimal distance from the others. Each one serves a district, and the edges of the zones overlap slightly, exactly how you design a system with redundancy, so one node can support another if something fails. You can measure it. The spacing is too precise to be an accident. And then comes the moment that changes everything. Overlay modern utility maps on top of these historical ones, and something strange appears. Some of those old black lines, the hydraulic power distribution lines from the 1890s, they're still there. Not active, not labeled, not celebrated, but present. Sealed pipes running under streets that have been repaved again and again. Connections that terminate at buildings that have been rebuilt. Infrastructure that was never removed, just abandoned in place. Modern maps don't explain them. They get brushed aside with labels like legacy conduit or historical infrastructure, purpose unknown. Unknown? The engineers maintaining Vienna's systems today don't clearly know what those lines were for, but we do now, because we've seen three maps that were never meant to be viewed together. We've noticed what becomes visible only in the overlap, and we've realized something unsettling. The system wasn't just large, it was precise, coordinated across an entire city, built to tolerances, positioned with mathematical care. This wasn't trial and error. This wasn't civic decoration that accidentally became useful. This was planned, and the plans were never meant to sit side by side on the same table. Until now. Progress arrives quietly at first. A new technology, a better system, promises of efficiency and modernity. And then, one day, it arrives with force. By 1910, electricity was winning. Not because hydraulic power had failed. It worked. It was dependable. Some systems ran for 50 years without major breakdowns. But electricity was easier to meter, easier to control, easier to monetize. You could charge by the kilowatt hour, measure consumption precisely, cut service from a distance when bills went unpaid. Hydraulic power didn't fit that model. Its infrastructure was distributed. It had multiple connection points. It relied on shared pressure across a district. Too communal, too hard to slice into neat individual accounts. So, the decision came from above. Electrification. The words start showing up in city council minutes across Europe. Berlin, 1912, Vienna, 1913, Lyon, 1914. Always the same clean language, modernization initiative, transition to electrical municipal services. The fountains would remain, of course, historic, beautiful, perfect for postcards. But the systems beneath them, those would be decommissioned. A worker's diary from Vienna, dated March 1913, describes his last shift at the Stadtpark hydraulic station. Drained the mains today. 40 years of pressure, gone in 3 hours. The gauges fell to zero. We locked the valve room and handed over the keys. Foreman said the electrical company takes over next month. Most of us aren't being kept on. Wrong kind of training, they said. Wrong kind of training. These were skilled workers, men who understood pressure systems, mechanical regulation, and how fluids behave inside sealed networks. They knew how to keep a district running without smoke, without noise, without a boiler in every basement. But electric systems needed electricians, different skills, different certifications, different people. A Berlin municipal report from 1914 lists 127 hydraulic system workers. By 1916, 18 remained. The rest were noted as released due to operational restructuring. Released, not fired, not laid off. Released like pressure being bled from a valve. And the knowledge went with them. How to maintain the underground chambers, how to read pressure, differentials across a district, how to recognize trouble from the sound of water moving through pipes you could not see. Specialized expertise built over decades, gone in 2 years. Some fountain stations were sealed, valves closed, access hatches welded shut, pressure chambers left to fill with stagnant water. Others were converted, electric pumps installed just to keep the water circulating for display. The old distribution mains were cut off, capped, and abandoned in place, and some, a few, were simply declared structurally unsound. A Munich fountain, operational since 1889, was demolished in 1918. The official reason, foundation degradation poses public safety risk. But a construction photograph from the demolition shows the foundation intact, solid, brickwork clean and dry, and in the background, a worker is carrying equipment out. Pressure gauges, valve assemblies, pieces of a system that still looked functional when they tore it down. Where did that equipment go? Into municipal storage, and much of it didn't stay there long. During the war years, when materials were needed, it was scrapped and sold as metal. The records of what was removed, filed under salvage operations, 1917 to 1919. Thousands of pages, equipment manifests, transfer logs. But the pages that would tell you where the equipment came from, exactly which fountains, which stations, those pages are missing from multiple archives, not misplaced, missing. As if someone removed the connecting tissue and left the rest standing. In Prague, the story rhymes. The Old Town Fountain Station, operational since 1891, was retired in 1921. A newspaper article from that year mentions it briefly. Old hydraulic works to be replaced with modern facilities. But no modern facilities were ever built at that location. The fountain remained, the basement was sealed, and the workers who had kept it running for 30 years found themselves unemployed. Expertise suddenly treated like a relic. One of them, František Novak, appears in a 1923 city directory as former hydraulic engineer. Former. By 1930, the directory lists him as a janitor. The human cost wasn't dramatic. No protests, no headlines, just quiet displacement. Skilled workers pushed into unskilled labor. Knowledge systems dismantled and not replaced. Infrastructure abandoned not because it failed, but because it didn't fit the new economic model. And the fountains? They kept flowing. They kept drawing crowds. Tourists still took photos. Children still played at the edge of the basin. But the machinery underneath fell silent, drained, sealed, forgotten. By 1925, most people had forgotten the fountains ever did anything other than look beautiful. The workers who knew otherwise were gone, and their children, growing up in the age of electricity, never learned what their fathers had built beneath the city squares. The knowledge didn't vanish with a bang. It simply stopped being passed on. The knowledge stopped being passed on, but the evidence remained until it didn't. Vienna, 1927. The city archives sit in a building near the Rathaus, basement storage, controlled rooms meant to protect decades of municipal records. A fire starts on the night of August 14th. The cause is officially listed as an electrical fault. The flames move fast through the basement corridors. Sprinkler systems activate, but the pressure is too weak. The fire reaches the archive rooms before the brigade can get there. Most of the building survives, but the basement section holding hydraulic system documentation from 1880 to 1910, total loss. The incident report is 3 pages long. It's mostly structural notes and insurance language. One line mentions the destroyed records, historical infrastructure documents, primarily obsolete hydraulic system files, unrecoverable, obsolete, so they become unrecoverable, and therefore not worth describing in detail. Berlin, 1931. Municipal records are being consolidated, moved out of older buildings into a new central archive facility. The transfer takes 6 months, hundreds of crates, decades of paper. During the move, a freight elevator fails on the 3rd floor. The cables snap. 17 crates fall 3 stories. Those crates contain, according to the accident report, miscellaneous engineering documents, 1885 to 1900. Miscellaneous. No detailed inventory. No list of what was lost. Just 17 crates of paper, now pulped beyond recovery. And one calm line at the end. Contents largely duplicated in other collections. Except they weren't. When researchers tried to reconstruct fountain system documentation in the 1990s, they found gaps, years missing, entire projects with no surviving file trail. The missing years match the range on those crates. Lyon, 1934. The Rhone floods. It's a major disaster. Weeks of rain, the river pushing past its banks, the old center under about 2 meters of water. Hundreds of buildings are damaged. Dozens are condemned. Among them is a storage facility near Place Bellecour that housed municipal engineering archives. The building survives. The basement does not. It floods completely. When the water recedes, the documents are ruined. Ink washed thin, paper collapsing into pulp. The salvage report lists 12 archive sections as total loss. Section 7, Hydraulic Infrastructure Plans, 1880 to 1895. Section 9. Public Work Specifications and Equipment Manifests, 1885 to 1900. The flood was natural. The disaster was real. But of all the sections that could have been stored down there, the ones destroyed are the exact ones we keep trying to find. Prague, 1942. War. The city is under occupation. Resources are scarce. Paper is suddenly valuable. A directive comes from the Occupation Administration. Non-essential documents should be pulped for recycling. City officials are ordered to review archives and designate materials for disposal. Non-essential gets interpreted broadly. Historical records, old engineering files, documents about systems that no longer operate, like hydraulic power networks from the 1890s. A disposal log from March 1942 lists 847 kilograms of documents sent for pulping. No detailed inventory, just a category. Obsolete infrastructure documentation. How much knowledge fits in 847 kilograms of paper? Enough to fill the gaps we're now trying to close. At this point, the pattern becomes hard to ignore. 4 cities, 4 accidents, 4 destructions of the exact documentation we need. Fire, accident, flood, war, different causes, different circumstances, same result. By 1945, the archival record of fountain hydraulic systems is fragmentary at best. No comprehensive plans, no complete equipment lists, no operational manuals, just scattered references, partial documents, and margin notes hiding in unrelated files. And an uncomfortable feeling that this wasn't just bad luck, not conspiracies, not shadowy villains, nothing that dramatic, just priorities. When a fire starts, people save what's marked important. When crates fall, people focus on what's labeled essential. When floods come, the valuable records get moved upstairs first. When paper is scarce, you keep what matters. And somewhere, in each city, someone decided that hydraulic fountain documentation did not matter. Obsolete systems, dead technology, historical curiosities at best, not worth saving. So, they weren't saved. And now, decades later, when we finally start asking questions, the answers have been pulped, burned, dissolved, recycled into cardboard boxes and toilet paper. The physical evidence still exists, the fountains, the sealed chambers, the abandoned pipes. But the paperwork that would explain it cleanly, definitively, gone, not destroyed with malice, destroyed with indifference, which might be worse. The paperwork is gone, but cities are made of more than paper. They're made of stone, metal, brick, concrete, and those materials, remember. Vienna, 2009. A construction crew is renovating a building near Schwarzenberg Platz. The structure dates to 1891. They're adding underground parking. The excavation breaks through into something unexpected. A tunnel, brick-lined, arched ceiling, dry, empty. But it isn't natural. It isn't a sewer. It isn't a cellar. The brickwork is too precise. The dimensions are too regular. And there's something else. Mounting brackets on the walls. Heavy iron fixtures bolted into the brick, spaced at clean, repeating intervals, still intact after more than a century. The foreman calls the city historical office. An inspector arrives. He photographs the space, measures it, notes the details. His report describes it as subsidiary infrastructure corridor, likely related to 19th century water management systems. Water management. That's what goes into the official record. But the tunnel runs directly from the building's basement toward the Hochstrahlbrunnen fountain, about 200 meters away. And those mounting brackets, they sit exactly where you would run pressure pipes. The tunnel is documented, photographed, then sealed behind the new parking structure, protected, preserved, forgotten. Berlin, 2015. Alexanderplatz is being renovated again. The plaza has been rebuilt so many times that construction crews joke about knowing every pipe and cable by heart. Except this time, they find one they don't recognize. A cast iron pipe. Massive, running beneath the fountain, branching in 4 directions. It's capped, sealed decades ago, but the metal looks almost pristine. Little corrosion, built like it was meant to last. The city utilities department has no record of it, not on modern maps, not in maintenance databases. A supervisor pulls historical infrastructure surveys from the 1950s. The pipe appears on a map from 1953, labeled simply, "Abandoned Conduit, Purpose Unknown." Nobody knew what it was for in 1953. Nobody knows now. But the measurements start giving clues. The diameter is far beyond what a decorative fountain needs. The wall thickness matches industrial pressure work, not simple drainage. And the branching pattern looks like distribution, 4 directions, clean splits, not a sewer or a runoff line. The pipe stays, too large to remove without ripping up the heart of the plaza, too thick to cut casually, so it remains, beneath tourists' feet, beneath modern stonework. A ghost of a system nobody remembers. Prague. A building maintenance worker named Carl is repairing a heating system in a basement near Old Town Square. He notices a door he's never paid attention to before, painted over, the handle removed, but the outline still shows in the brick. He chips away the paint. The door is steel, solid, locked. He calls his supervisor. The supervisor checks building records. Nothing mentions the door. Nothing explains what's behind it. They force it open. Beyond it, a descending stairway. Stone steps, walls lined with glazed brick. At the bottom, a chamber, empty now, but the walls still tell stories. There are mounts for valve wheels, brackets for gauges, pipe penetrations that have been capped with concrete. And on one wall, barely visible under grime and age, painted letters. HP 12 Ost, 1892. HP 12 East, 1892. The chamber is photographed, logged. The building owner is informed. Then the door is sealed again. Too expensive to convert into usable space. Too historically sensitive to demolish. So, it sits. One more sealed. Room in a basement nobody visits. Lyon, 2018. During metro construction, tunneling equipment breaks through into a void. A large void, chamber-like. Work stops. Engineers assess. The space is brick-lined, about 8 meters in diameter. A domed ceiling, and at the center, a circular foundation. Reinforced concrete, thick and deliberate. Something was mounted there, something heavy, something that needed real structural support. The chamber sits directly beneath Place Bellecour, directly beneath where the fountain stands. The metro route is adjusted slightly to avoid it. The chamber is left in place, documented as a historical foundation structure. No explanation, no context. Just another mystery sealed behind concrete bulkheads, preserved by accident, not by intention. The documents are gone, but the city remembers. In sealed tunnels and capped pipes. In chambers hidden behind doors that were painted over and forgotten. In mounting brackets that once held equipment we can no longer name. This infrastructure survived because it was too solid to remove and too embedded to erase. And now, piece by piece, we're finding it again. Not through archives, through excavation. The city is telling its own story. We just have to listen to the stones. The stones tell us something was there, but stones don't tell us what it meant. So, we're left with 2 explanations, 2 ways of seeing the same evidence. Let's be fair to both. Explanation 1. Standard infrastructure. The fountains were part of normal municipal water systems. Beautiful, yes, but functional. They supplied drinking water, supported firefighting access, and fed decorative water features throughout parks and plazas. The deep excavations, standard practice for stable foundations, especially in soft ground or complicated soil. The oversized pipes, main distribution lines that happen to route through fountain locations. The sealed chambers, valve rooms for regulating water pressure, necessary in any large city with elevation changes and multiple districts. The nearby pavilions, legitimate maintenance structures, built ornate because 19th century cities often valued beauty even in utility buildings. The gaps in documentation, expected, records get lost, fires happen, floods happen, wars destroy archives. There's no mystery in bureaucratic failure. The workers who lost jobs, economic transition. It happens. Every technology shift displaces people, coal miners, lamplighters, switchboard operators. Hydraulic engineers were simply the next in line. This explanation is clean, rational. It requires no hidden purpose and no concealed function, just ordinary infrastructure development, complicated by incomplete records and by modern eyes that sometimes see patterns where none exist. It's possible, entirely possible. Explanation. 2. Hidden distribution networks. The fountains were nodes in hydraulic power systems. Beautiful, yes, but deliberately so. The beauty was the disguise. Beneath them sat pressure regulation stations, distribution hubs, places where hydraulic power could be divided and sent out to surrounding buildings, government offices, banks, communication centers, buildings that needed reliable power but couldn't afford or didn't want visible steam plants. The deep excavations, necessary for pressure chambers and equipment rooms. The oversized pipes, high-pressure mains built to carry working loads, not just decorative flow. The sealed chambers, operational spaces for equipment that was later removed, sealed over and forgotten. The nearby pavilions, access structures, entry points to underground networks that couldn't fit entirely beneath the fountains themselves. The gaps in documentation, deliberate separation. Technical records kept isolated from public-facing records, then lost, discarded, or quietly broken apart when the systems became obsolete. The workers who lost jobs, skilled specialists whose knowledge became inconvenient, easier to let them go than to retrain them. Simpler to seal the chambers than explain what those chambers were actually for. This explanation is messier. It requires intent. It suggests cities built dual-purpose infrastructure. Art that worked, utility that looked like art, then quietly erased the connecting evidence when newer systems replaced it. It's also possible, disturbingly possible. Which is true? Here's the problem. We can't prove either one definitively. The physical evidence supports both interpretations. Large pipes could be water mains, or they could be pressure distribution lines. Sealed chambers could be valve rooms for either system. Ornate buildings could be aesthetically minded utility structures, or deliberately disguised access points. Both explanations fit the facts. The difference is intention. Were the fountains infrastructure that happened to be beautiful, or were they beautiful specifically to hide infrastructure? Did documentation vanish through neglect, or through quiet, deliberate disposal when the system changed hands? Were the workers simply casualties of progress, or witnesses to something cities decided wasn't worth preserving? Right now, we don't have enough to choose. The archives are gone, the workers are dead, the systems are sealed. All we have are physical remnants and two competing stories. One asks us to see normal civic development. One asks us to see coordinated concealment. And here's what's unsettling. Both could be partially true. Maybe some fountains were just fountains, and maybe some weren't. Maybe some cities built open systems, and maybe some built hidden ones. Maybe the truth is fractal, different at every scale, in every city, depending on who held power and what they wanted to hide, or control, or simply keep out of public debate. We can present the evidence. We can show you the sealed chambers and the abandoned pipes. We can line up the maps and point to the overlaps. But we can't tell you which explanation to believe. That choice is yours. And maybe that uncertainty, the gap between what we can prove and what we suspect. Maybe that's the most honest thing we can offer. Schwarzenbergplatz, Vienna, dusk. The Hochstrahlbrunnen stands at the center of the square. Water shoots 30 meters into the air, catching the last light of day. The bronze figures around the base gleam. Tourists gather, cameras out. At this hour, the fountain looks almost unreal. Nobody looks down. Nobody notices the maintenance hatch at the fountain's base, weathered but still intact. Nobody spots the ventilation grate, half hidden behind ornamental stonework. Nobody walks the 20 meters to the small pavilion and wonders why its door is solid steel. The fountain flows. The city moves. Life continues as it has for more than a century. But beneath the plaza, something remains. Sealed tunnels, capped pipes, chambers with mounting brackets for equipment that has been gone for 90 years. The infrastructure is still there, silent, forgotten. The city built on top of it, over it, around it. But it never fully removed it, because removing it would require acknowledging it existed. And by the time anyone thought to ask questions, everyone who knew the answers was gone. A construction crew working near the Rathaus last year broke through into a brick-lined corridor. They documented it, photographed it, then sealed it again behind fresh concrete. The report listed it as historical infrastructure, origin uncertain. Uncertain. That's the word that follows this story. Not false, not debunked, uncertain. The evidence exists. The physical remnants are real. The maps overlap. The patterns repeat across cities. But the explanations, the clean, definitive paperwork that would settle it, that's gone. Maybe it was never meant to be found together. Maybe someone a century ago decided that surface beauty and underground function should remain separate stories. Or maybe we're seeing conspiracy and coincidence, mystery in mundane infrastructure, patterns in random loss. Both are possible. And that's what makes this compelling. Not that we've uncovered a hidden truth, but that we've uncovered a hidden uncertainty, a gap in the historical record large enough to hold possibilities we can't quite prove or disprove. The fountains remain, water flows, tourists photograph, children play, and beneath them, sealed and silent, sits infrastructure that might have been ordinary, or might have been extraordinary. We will probably never know for certain. The workers who built it are dead. The records are destroyed. The systems are sealed. All that's left is the physical evidence and two competing interpretations. You can choose to see normal civic infrastructure, complicated by messy record-keeping and lost archives. Or you can choose to see something more deliberate, more coordinated, more carefully hidden. Both views fit the facts. Neither can be proven absolutely, and maybe that's the real treasure, not a secret machine humming beneath our feet, but a reminder that cities have layers, that beauty can hide function, that the past wasn't always as simple as plaques and guidebooks suggest, that sometimes the most important infrastructure isn't the part we see. It's the part we've learned not to notice. The fountain at dusk continues to flow. Spectacular, timeless, beautiful. And if you stop, if you look down instead of up, if you notice the hatch, the grate, the two thick pipes glimpsed through cracks in the paving, you might start to wonder, what else have we stopped noticing? What else sits beneath surfaces we've learned to take for granted? What other systems run quietly under our feet, their purposes lost to time, their existence preserved only in sealed chambers and abandoned tunnels? The city remembers, even when we forget. The stones remember, even when the paper burns. And somewhere, beneath a fountain you've probably walked past a dozen times, something waits, not magic, not conspiracy, just history. Complex, layered, uncertain, the way history actually is.